I gave them free lawn care while they traveled, even took in packages. I asked once if they'd mow while I was recovering from surgery. Hire someone. You're not my charity, she texted. So I did. And when that landscaper saw what they'd dumped in my shed, he called me over, whispering. I live just outside Omaha, in a quiet neighborhood where people still wave when they drive past, even if they don't know you. I bought my house 22 years ago, raised 2 boys here, buried a husband here, and plan to die here too. I worked HVAC until a job injury wrecked my right knee. That was the beginning of the end of that career. After I retired, I started taking pride in little things. Keeping the yard trimmed, repainting the porch rail, feeding birds in the backyard. Nothing fancy, just control. When everything else in life spun out, I still had control over my lawn. Then Julie and Ben moved in next door. I'd say they were early 40s. No kids. 2 brand new Range Rovers, yard signs for local campaigns, an overpriced fire pit out back they never used. You could smell the money off them. They seemed friendly enough at first. Julie brought over a bottle of wine the first week, said they were happy to be in a real neighborhood. About 6 months in, they went on their first big trip. Italy or France, I forget. Julie texted, asked if I could keep an eye on the house, grab any packages that showed up, water the porch plants. I said sure. That turned into a pattern. Every few months, they'd go somewhere, Greece, Turks and Caicos, Napa, and I'd be the one dragging their Amazon boxes inside, mowing their grass if it got too long, hauling their trash bins out on collection day. They never said thank you. Not once. No card, no gift, no small gesture. I wasn't expecting anything at first. But after a while it started to feel assumed. So last spring, I find out I need surgery. Knee replacement. My good leg had been taking all the weight for too long and it finally gave out. I scheduled the operation. They said 6 to 8 weeks recovery, with the first 2 being brutal. I wasn't trying to guilt anyone. I just needed a hand. I texted Julie. Hey, small favor to ask. I'll be recovering from surgery in a few weeks. Any chance you and Ben could mow my yard, maybe twice while I'm down? Just until I can stand again. She replied almost exactly an hour later. Sorry. Hire someone. You're not my charity.
No emoji. No joke.
No follow-up. That line stuck in my head for days. I wasn't angry right away. I was embarrassed. It made me feel like a beggar. Like I'd crossed some line just by asking. I didn't respond. I just deleted the message and found a landscaper the next day. Local guy named Tyler. About 30, quiet, polite. Didn't push sales or talk much. Just did the job. I gave him the shed key so he could use the trimmer and my gas can. Everything was going fine. Until 2 weeks later. That day, I was sitting in my kitchen after physical therapy when I heard a knock. It was Tyler. His face looked weird. Like he didn't want to say something, but he had to. Miss Ritchie? Do you mind coming out to the shed for a sec? I followed him outside, slow, leaning on my cane. He opened the shed door and stepped back. Inside, toward the far wall, was a tarp. A blue one. Not mine. Tyler pulled it back. Underneath, heavy-duty black contractor bags. 5 of them. Big, lumpy, and full. I was reaching for the trimmer and saw this, he said. They weren't here before. I opened one. It was drywall. Cracked tile. A broken ceiling fan. Metal pieces, old pipes, cardboard soaked with paint. Straight-up construction junk. And I knew right away. It wasn't for my house. Julie and Ben had a bathroom reno a couple months back. Whole crew of contractors in and out for 3 weeks. Dumpster out front for a few days, but it vanished fast. Guess they didn't want to pay for another. So they dumped it in my shed. I didn't tell Tyler anything except, thanks for letting me know. He nodded, looked pissed for me, but didn't ask questions. I locked the shed. Sat on my porch for an hour just stewing. I kept picturing that text. You're not my charity. And then them just sneaking into my yard like I was their dump. That's when I decided I'd make this right. Not loud. Not angry. Just right. I didn't go over there yelling. I didn't text her back. I didn't even make eye contact when Julie waved at me from her car a few days later like nothing had happened. Instead, I called the city, told them someone dumped construction waste on my property without a permit, asked what to do. They said they'd send someone out to inspect and maybe find whoever did it, depending on who it belonged to. I said thank you and gave them Julie and Ben's address since I had a pretty good feeling about where it came from. But I didn't stop there. I called a buddy of mine, Mike, who used to be a building inspector. He'd seen a lot over the years, people cutting corners on permits, hiding stuff in their basements, all that. I asked him if he remembered the contractor that worked on their bathroom. Oh yeah, he said. Guy's done a few jobs around town.
Cheap.
Cuts corners, doesn't pull permits half the time.
Perfect.
Next day, I went into town and filed a complaint with the city housing office. Claimed that my neighbors had done unpermitted construction and illegally dumped the debris on my property. It felt a little extreme, but I didn't care. I'd played nice. I'd been the good neighbor. And they'd treated me like garbage. I waited. 2 weeks later, the city came out. Not just code enforcement, but an actual inspector. I watched from my window as they walked over, clipboard in hand, and knocked on Julie and Ben's door. Julie came out smiling. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw her face drop when he pointed toward my yard. They both came back and looked inside my shed. Julie was talking fast. The inspector just nodded, wrote something down, and left. Later that day, Julie knocked on my door. I didn't answer. Next morning, the bags were gone from my shed. Not a word. Not a note. Just disappeared. I thought that'd be the end of it. But it wasn't. 3 days after the junk vanished, Tyler came again to mow. Afterward, he walked up looking confused. Hey, did you say those bags were gone? He asked.
Yeah.
Why? He handed me something he'd pulled from the far corner of the shed. A thick, sealed envelope. It had gotten wedged behind an old toolbox. I opened it on the spot. Inside were receipts. Contractor invoices, material lists, photos, even a floor plan sketch. All labeled with Julie's full name and their address. Not just for the bathroom, but a second job too.
A garage remodel.
All unfiled. They'd used my shed to stash the trash, and somehow, by mistake, left behind proof of even more unpermitted work. I didn't even think twice. I packed it all in a folder and drove it straight to the city office. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of iced tea and watched as a white truck from the city pulled up next door. Julie came outside in a robe, Ben trailing behind. They argued on the porch while the man from the city just pointed at papers in his hand. I couldn't hear what was said, but I didn't need to. I figured that was it. They'd get fined, maybe have to rip out some work, pay a little extra. Lesson learned. But a week later, I got a letter in the mail. From a lawyer. Julie and Ben were claiming I had trespassed and removed property from their private construction site. They wanted compensation. $3,400 to cover damaged materials and contractor delays. I almost laughed. But it wasn't funny. It was real. Legal letterhead. A signature at the bottom. A threat. That's when I realized this wasn't about junk or lawns or favors. Julie was the type of person who couldn't stand to be told no. She thought she was better than me, that I was the help. And when I pushed back even just once, she tried to crush me for it. I called the city, explained everything again. Sent copies of the receipts Tyler had found, photos of the debris in my shed, and screenshots of her text. The city investigator told me off the record, "We're already looking into some other things on their property. You're not the first neighbor to say something." I didn't know what that meant at the time. Then Tyler called me one morning. Said, "Hey, Miss Ritchie, you might want to come outside." I stepped out onto my porch. There, across the street, was a city truck. Another one. And 2 guys in yellow vests standing near the back of Julie and Ben's house. One of them had a clipboard. The other was measuring something with a long metal stick. They were checking property lines. Turns out, part of their new fence was 3 feet over the legal boundary. Onto public land. No permit. No approval. Over the next 2 weeks, the city issued 3 separate fines. One for dumping. One for the unpermitted renovations. and one for encroaching onto city property. Julie and Ben tried to appeal, but the evidence wasn't in their favor. And I hadn't even told them the worst part. The final envelope. It showed up in my mailbox tucked between junk ads and utility bills. No return address. Just a manila envelope. Inside was a photo of Ben, at a bar, with someone that wasn't Julie, sitting real close. And stapled to it? A printed copy of a Facebook Messenger conversation. It was between Ben and someone named T. Flirty messages. Hotel meetups. One from just a month ago. I don't know who sent it, or why they sent it to me, but I kept it.
Just in case.
A few days later, I saw Julie alone on the porch. No Ben. She was pacing, phone to her ear, sunglasses on even though it was cloudy. She kept turning away from the street, like she didn't want to be seen. I didn't care what she was dealing with. Until that night. Around 9:30, someone banged on my door. Not a knock.
A bang.
It was Julie. She looked like hell. No makeup, hair frizzy, red around the eyes like she'd been crying for hours. "You need to stop," she said, barely getting the words out. I didn't say anything. She stepped closer. "I know it was you who called the city. I know you went through our stuff." "Your stuff? You mean the garbage in my shed?" I said. Her lip curled, but she didn't answer that. Then she said, "I don't care what you think you found. You don't know what you're doing. You're messing with something bigger than you understand." I raised an eyebrow. "Are you threatening me?"
She paused, blinked,
then looked scared that she might have said too much. "I'm warning you," she said finally, quieter. "Just stop digging." And she walked off. That shook me more than I expected. I locked every door and window in the house. I even turned my porch light back on, which I hadn't done in years. The next morning, I went out to check the shed again. Everything seemed fine, until I looked under the shelf where I keep old paint cans. There was a small device taped under it. Black. With a blinking red light. I didn't touch it. I called Tyler. He came right over, looked at it, and said, "That's a camera. A wireless one." He took it apart carefully and found a serial number. We looked it up. Sure enough, it was the kind used for home security systems. Small, easy to hide, cloud-connected. Julie had put a camera in my shed, which meant she'd been watching. That changed everything. I called the police, not the emergency line, just the regular department. Told them I'd found what looked like unauthorized surveillance equipment on my property. They sent an officer over. I handed it to him, explained the whole situation. He took a report, promised to look into it. A few hours later, I saw the cruiser parked outside Julie and Ben's house. Julie didn't come out. Ben did. And his face, he looked completely different. Not smug, not annoyed, just tired. Like he'd given up. 2 days passed. Quiet. Then late one afternoon, Ben came over alone. I was out front deadheading the azaleas, just for something to do. He walked up slow, hands in his pockets, eyes down. "Hey," he said. "You got a second?" I stood up straight, leaned on my cane. "If it's about the city fines, talk to them." He shook his head.
No.
"Not about that." I said nothing. Let the silence sit.
He sighed.
"Look, I didn't know she put anything in your shed. I swear. She handled all that with the contractor. I thought the crew hauled it off like they were supposed to." I didn't respond. Ben glanced back at their house. "She's been different since her dad passed. Controlling. Paranoid. She thinks everyone's out to get her." "That doesn't explain the camera," I said. He flinched. "I didn't know about that either." "I swear. When the cop came by, that was the first I heard of it." "Ben," I said, "you've lived here 2 years. I took in your packages, watched your house, even mowed your damn lawn. Then I ask for one favor, and your wife calls me Charity." He nodded slowly, guilt clear in his face. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have said something sooner." Then he hesitated. "There's something else," he said, lowering his voice. "The city's not just looking into the Reno stuff. Someone tipped off the insurance board about the remodels. The house isn't zoned for half the work we had done. If they dig deeper, we could lose the house." I stared at him. You want me to feel bad for you now? No, he said quickly. I wanted you to know before Julie tries anything else.
She's not done.
When she feels cornered, she gets reckless. And then he said something I didn't expect. She found the envelope, he said quietly. The one with the photo and the messages. I don't know who sent it, but she blames you. My stomach dropped. I didn't send that, I said. He nodded. I believe you. But she doesn't. He turned to leave. Just before he stepped off the porch, he said, just be careful. She's not who you think she is. That night, someone slashed Tyler's back tire. He texted me a picture the next morning. Deep, clean cuts across the sidewall. I didn't see who did it, he wrote, but it happened after I parked here. He'd left his truck across the street from my place, like he always did when mowing. It had to be someone who knew. I told him not to come by until things calmed down. I didn't want him getting dragged further into it. Later that afternoon, I checked my mail and found another envelope. No return address. Just my name, printed in thick marker. Inside, a single typed sheet. You should learn when to keep your head down. You're not a victim. You're just lonely. There was no signature. But I didn't need one. I called the police again. Filed another report. The officer seemed polite, but uninterested. Could be a prank, he said. We'll note it, but unless something physical happens, I knew that tone. I was an old woman with a cane. What harm could Julie possibly be? The next morning, Ben was gone. His car, his bike, everything. Julie came outside around noon in a white robe, watering her porch plants like nothing had changed. I stood at my window and watched her. Slow, calm movements. Like the last 2 weeks hadn't happened. Then she looked up, right at me, held eye contact for 5 full seconds, then smiled. The same day, the neighborhood Facebook group lit up. Someone had posted anonymously about a bitter older resident who was obsessed with their neighbors and spreading lies to the city. They didn't name me, but it was obvious. People started commenting. Some defended me, some didn't. Then someone else posted a photo, my house, from the street, with a caption that said, "This lady's got cameras now." Paranoid much. I hadn't even installed a camera. But Julie wanted people to think I had. Wanted them to believe I was the crazy one.
And it started to work.
A few days later, a man I barely knew from the block crossed the street to avoid me when I was checking my mailbox. That night, I found the last thing that made it all click. Behind my shed, half buried in mulch, was a small black folder. Inside, a stack of printed documents. Old medical bills. Divorce records. Someone else's. Except the name at the top was Julie's, but it wasn't her last name. It was her maiden name. And under aliases, it listed 2 others. One was a name I recognized from a headline years ago.
Fraud.
Identity theft. Charges dropped. Not enough evidence. Suddenly I understood. The obsession with control. The fear. The need to keep up the image. Julie wasn't just cruel. Julie was hiding something. And now she thought I knew too much. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about that folder. About all the weird little things I hadn't questioned over the last 2 years. How Julie never talked about her family. How she'd freak out if a package got delivered to the wrong address. How Ben always looked like he was playing catch-up in his own life. I made 3 copies of everything in that folder. Put one in a fireproof box. Mailed another to a friend in Lincoln. Gave the third to Tyler, sealed in an envelope, just in case. I was done playing nice. I called the state insurance fraud hotline and left a detailed message. Then I wrote a formal complaint to the zoning board, attaching copies of everything I had. I didn't accuse her of fraud outright. Just laid out the facts. Let them connect the dots. 2 days later, I came home from a physical therapy appointment to find my back window cracked. Just the outer pane not broken through, but enough to see it had been hit. A rock lay in the flower bed under it. No note this time. No message.
Just quiet.
I didn't call the police. I just sat at my kitchen table, hands flat on the surface, and stared out the window. This wasn't about the shed anymore. Or the lawn.
Or even the camera.
This was about someone who'd spent her whole life lying. And now, one quiet old woman next door had become a threat. Julie didn't need me to expose her. She just needed me to disappear. I still sit on my porch most mornings. I watch the sun come up over their roof and wonder if today will be the day someone knocks on her door with a warrant, or if she'll just vanish one night, like Ben did. Sometimes I think about that text she sent me, the one that started it all. "You're not my charity." Funny thing is, I never wanted charity. I wanted decency. But I guess some people see those as the same thing.